good thing I did this, so even if I go send out, I'll still be able to go back and remember what was happening at certain times and go back over and keep it in order. Oh yeah, in 1992, I was one of the founding members of AFAN, and I was elected as a steering committee member for the education coordinating for the chair of education, and in 1992, and that was a strong influence because it affected me being involved with the international group and putting together the mailing list and working with to help build up that organization. So that pulled me out into a more social level with astrology and functional level. Then by the time I got to the midheaven in 1998, this way, yeah, I had got in just in the first cycle, when the moon went through this ninth house, I spent the 2 years in India. And the second time, 1997, I also went back to India, and I went back into these meditation solitude rooms. And I only spent a week there, but I spent a month, about 6 weeks traveling around India and places in that time. And I had just come back. And at this point, in 1998, I started my astrology website, iastro.com. I started a chanting group. I lectured to some Vedic astrologers in New Delhi, and I was very active. So I also visited my mom in Hungary. I went and took a trip there. So I was fairly established, and I was making money enough to take these trips and do these things. So that was the peak, 1998. By 2004, when I hit my ascendant, I was a coordinator of a African drum festival, an Afrofest in Toronto, and we put on a big conference. I set up the drum stage and was working with that. So we put on those as it was hitting this. And my mom's relationship, she's 80, getting 80, and she called me, her husband started doing the cleaning lady. So she says, damn, that was my best cleaning lady. But she was heartbroken, and she had to leave Hungary, which is his country, not hers. But they've been together 35 years. She came to Toronto and stayed with. I had a year to spend some time with her. So this was over this time. She lived a year before she passed away. But that was so her dying, and that year was the moon going over my ascendant into the first house. So you can see how the moon and family measures came up prominently at each of these turning points. So 2011, it hits my IC. And in 2011, I began the International Scholarship Program. And that was the start of, I realized I could give people scholarships around the world to study from my audio files of my classes. I had them all recorded. And I started letting people apply for the scholarship and getting it. And now, 2019, it's on my descendant. As it gets to my descendant, the scholarship has been going all the time. I've done the webinars now. I've replaced the audio files with as I went through the sixth house, I did the English webinar series, which I'm just finishing now. So this, and now the scholarship program is still going, but there's 1,000 students in over 75 countries that have benefited by the scholarship over the years, and now it's transformed itself from audio files and video and graphic files to video files that put the whole thing together on the student forum. So it's just finishing, and that moon's going to be pulling me out now. At the same time, since I'm trying to go back, it was 2004, since 2000 and 1998, or even before that, but my last relationship and going to India and come back, I've been celibate since then. I've been on my own and celibate, not looking to try and fit in since then. So that allowed me to live more in my hobbies and more in my own personal, my meditations, my chanting and astrology, and work on these things on my own. When you're on your own, you can be perfect, but nobody tells you, and there's no one there to remind you you're not so perfect. Of course, every now and then someone comes in and you get reminded and you get humbled a little bit. But this is it. It's just changed. It's just changed now, over the last couple of months. And it's just as I'm finishing this progressed class, there's only one more class, I've really been able to complete. I always wanted to do this last class because it was, with my wisdom now, my understanding now, it would be the best I could do to present these things as best as I could be and pass them on. So, yeah, so now I have this work involved, and who knows if I start traveling or being around a bit more, but this was a big change through here. At the same time as the moon hit the descendant, there were difficulties with one of my grandsons and stuff that I couldn't help well with. So that there was a family issue involved with this as well. So that's it. In 2025, the progressed moon goes up to my midheaven. So this is the progressed moon touching the, so we went through it, squaring and opposing itself, then touching the angles, it goes there. And it's not possible to just dryly say just this and then just go look it up. So you're going to have to do this work and see. Those of you in the class, I have these graphs done. We're going to look at your charts, but we won't be able to go into such detail. But there's so we have the moon to itself and the moon going across the angles above and below the horizon, 14 years below the horizon, 14 years above. These 14-year cycles are huge. I lived in a barn in Aurora for 14 years, from about 2002 till about 2016. So not quite all below the horizon, but most of that was my time below the horizon, where I put the class. I was living in my own little world. I was in a barn like a studio, but it was great. I had 3,000 square feet, and with all the facilities, I could play drums, make noise, not disturb anybody. It wasn't a barn way in the country. It was in a city, but it still had no other buildings right beside it. So I could play drums, make noise, not be disturbed. I could record. It was a great place. And then I had to suddenly move when I was 70. So that just changed things over the last couple of years. But the rent stayed the same for 14 years. So it was like cheap, good, it worked. Okay, now the next point. Okay, this just put the 2 in. It just has times for the moon squaring and opposed itself, and the times for crossing the angle. So this is what your graph should be looking like as you've built it up. You have to draw this 3 spirals around, and the others are just the conjunction square oppositions, the angles set up around your chart. Then you just have to use the printout to get the dates for when these things happen. And I'm going to show you how to do that shortly. Okay, so then you have to add another factor. There's another level. So we've worked with the progressed moon going around the chart. Oh, at the same time as it's going around, sorry, just back up a little bit here. At the same time, the progressed moon is going around, it's going to make all the aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, sextiles, trines to every planet around your chart. And that's filling in the detail and the textures of these main turning points. And the moon moves about a degree. It's each degree is about a month. So there's about, each aspect it makes to any planet is going to be about a 2-month phase, 2 to 3 month phase in your life. So if it's hitting Uranus, you got 2 or 3 months of shock or sudden change. If it's going to hit the moon, it's going to indulge the moon things. If it's going to hit Saturn, you're going to have that restrictions or depressions or inhibition coming in. If it's going to hit Pluto, you're going to have the confrontations. It's going to hit Neptune, there's going to be confusions or temptations. And you're going to see these things for each of the planets. It's Mercury, it's going to be environmental feelings, moods, and thoughts. You're going to bring up some sort. It's going to Jupiter, your understanding is going to be challenged, your opportunities might. It's going to hit Mars, it's going to have 2 months of pushiness, of assertiveness, to you or from you. But there'll be 4 hits to each planet as the moon goes around once. There'll be a conjunction, square, and opposition to each planet and to the moon. So you take the 10 points and you watch that around. You got 40 points across 28 years. And that's the texture of the aspects and the texture of the drama that can go in. We'll look a little bit at this, but I didn't do it on. I didn't bring up mine. It's enough talking about me, but it just was. I wanted to show you how this works and how it integrates. So the next thing we do, we add we did the progressed sun already, but you add the progressed sun in here. You see, there's the progressed suns. My progressed sun's in Libra. My natal sun's in Libra. It's going to progress to Scorpio, Sag, and Capricorn. And that's my lifetime for my progressed sun. While my progressed sun is moving that much, the progressed moon is moving around these 3 times. So this is the main things with progressions. If it's going to affect you personally in a critical way, it's going to be a progressed planet to your natal planet. Just like with the transits, it's a transit to the natal chart. There's all kinds of transits to transits. And you're part of it, but they don't really affect you critically unless they're touching a degree in your chart. The same with the progressions. Progressions going on, unless they're touching something in your chart, it's not so critical. But there are some things that happen in the progressed chart that have their presence and affect your chart. So, and this is where we're looking at the progressed sun and the progressed moon. Well, as the moon goes around 3 times, it's going to go through this sun zone where the sun's going in my lifetime. It's going to cross that area 3 times. And each time the sun will have moved 30 to 28 degrees more along. Okay, 30 degrees more along, actually. So what happens is as the moon's in the area where the progressed sun would be, there's going to be a new moon. And the full moon, the progressed full moon, this is not the moon opposing your natal chart or opposing your sun in your natal chart. That's it's all, you have your natal phase of the moon. This is your spiritual phase of them. This is the progressed sun and the progressed moon going through its phases of greatest darkness to greatest light and being your inner environment that you're living in. And these phases of the progressed moon are really incredible to apply. So we use that we're incredible with the natal chart when you work with it. When you start seeing the progression, you see they're setting a standard for you for every 3 years or 3.5 years. It's quite incredible to see that and to see how it applies. So first we have to calculate them. This is the beginning of putting the progressed sun in. You begin to see where the new moons and full moons are. Of course, we're going to have to calculate them to know it exactly. So to do that, we'll do it by, I'll show you how to do it by computer, but you find it, you can do it in the ephemeris. You see the new moon from the degree it's in. You just have to have, if you've got your progressed constant date, it's not hard to convert it to the time to see what time it would be at. But really, we're going to use computers to do this now, because when I started, I had to do this all by hand for many years before there were computers available. It didn't seem, it was a lot of work, but to get the information, it was worth doing at the time. There was no other way to get it. Now people would just close it down. They do without it. But my first new moon comes in the 1st degree of Scorpio. It was in 1954, June 25th. And the second new moon, 1984, March 31st. First new moon. The third new moon was in 2014, January 17th. Those are the 3 new moons I'll have in my lifetime. And in between, you see these gray dots. On the opposite side, there's another gray dot. These are the full moons. So I had a full moon in 1969. October, just as I finished with India, it was the full moon, and I came back to North America. I had a full moon in 1999. I had to move then and start a new direction. So that was, and then the next full moon is in 2028. Okay, and it comes just within a month or so of when the moon comes back. The new moon comes in another month or so later. It's conjunct itself. The moon's conjunct itself again. But so the dramatic things are the moon going around the houses and the signs. But the new moons, where the new moons are, in my 3rd house, in my 4th house, and in my 4th house. So my communication, where I'm living, my security, these are the deep impressions of my life. I have moves I've had to make, things I've had to learn, just personally. And often those are against the backdrop of not fitting in and not being established, or having struggles to try and get by to pay for the rent or whatever. See, I've worked for myself my whole life. I've never had a salary where I knew the rent was coming. Many's the time I just got to I didn't know the rent was coming until it was rent day. I just made it, or sometimes a little late. It was never exactly clear. That wasn't a steady factor, but I didn't have anyone telling me what to do, which was a good thing in my life, for me.